Warning, this podcast contains heavy spoilers for not just one movie, but entire franchises. We highly recommend going and watching these movies before listening to us as a companion piece that stitches all the timelines into one creepy, crime-ridden story. There will be no more spoiler warnings. We do not break character. After this, there is no turning back. You've been warned. Hit the music.
You are talking about the nonsensical ravings of a lunatic mind.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's
alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to It's Alive Alive podcast. This is a true crime, paranormal, interstellar podcast covering unbelievable stories that sound like they were ripped straight from the pages of a Hollywood script. I'm your host, the outlaw Dr. H. George Smokestein, THC, and with me as always is my very own Scream Queen, the perfect combination of beauty and brains, the bride of Smokestein, the India heart, the expert of guts and gore, the gorgeous, the sexy Amy Rose.
Hi.
And last week, Amy, we thought we'd get through the entire Andy Barclay story, but my God, there's a lot in it. And since it's all kind of recorded as accidental deaths, we got to go through old tabloid newspapers to try and decipher what exactly happened. National Enquirer, that kind of shit, because the big papers, they have no interest in the killer doll story after a week or two. We only got as far as Andy's 8th birthday and a second Chucky event before we ran out of time.
Meaning we need to fit the end of his story into this episode along with Tiffany's story and murder investigation, so we're in for a pretty thick episode.
Yes, we are.
So when we left Andy last week, he had been removed from the Simpsons residence after the tragic accidental death of Philip Simpson. This death would lead to the suicide of Phil's wife and Andy's foster mother, Joanne Simpson, who is said to be devastated by grief.
So last week we pointed out that, again, I still believe that Tiffany Valentine has something to do with that, and we get deeper into that by the end of this episode. But himself and his foster sister Kyle got the blame for this one. Yes. Basically, after Andy started to claim that Chucky was back and killing again, his foster sister, who I reckon was 17 at the time. 17, 18. Well, if she was 18, she'd be out of the foster care system. So 17, I think.
21 is
counting
just
down to 18.
Drink age. Yeah,
but basically, the police believe that Kyle orchestrated the entire event. There is CCTV footage of her walking around the place holding a good guy doll, especially at the death of Grace Poole, who was Andy's social worker. Yeah. She was seen there with a good guy doll, like I said, and Grace ends up dead straight afterwards. Yeah. And later on, there's CCTV footage of both Andy and Kyle running around a Play Pal factory that was specifically there. It was a good guy factory, Play Pals. Yeah. But they were seen running around there causing trouble. And that also led to the death of one worker who was doing a little overtime on a night shift.
So after Phil and Joanne's death, the plan was to bring Andy back to the group home until a more suitable family could be found to fit his ever-growing special needs. But after his little trip to the Play Pals factory with Kyle and utter insistence to the existence of Chucky, the killer good guy doll, Andy was deemed too mentally ill for regular society, and he was ordered by the courts to be admitted to Illinois State Hospital for the Criminally Insane for observation, evaluation, and treatment.
No, treatment kind of led to a lot of medication and shock therapy is how they try to deal with this. The conditions in the hospital weren't exactly great as well, because Andy wasn't exactly coming from money. So he was in a state hospital where I suppose your needs aren't going to be met as well as they would if you were paying your way into one of these places, which is bad. I mean, that's not the way things should go. I mean, everyone deserves equal health care, mental or physical. But in Andy's case here, we're talking about the early 90s. He was just deemed a bad kid, and they pumped him full of chemicals and shocked the shit out of his brain until they thought he was fixed. No, Andy was an intelligent guy and had been through a lot at this point, and kind of took a leaf out of Ed Kemper's book. Okay. I don't know if you know about Ed Kemper's first stint in a mental institution.
Oh, no.
Ed killed his grandparents in his early teens.
Oh, I didn't know about
killing
that.
his grandmother because he was living with his family or his mother and kids, or mother and sisters.
Yeah.
And the mother thought he was too, I suppose, weird to be around the daughters, the way he was acting. The mother wasn't a great mother either.
Yeah.
So she kind of fobbed him off on her own parents. Her mother, similar to her, was a bit of a bitch, treated Ed like shit. And one day Grandpa went out to get some bits and pieces and Ed got the rifle and blew her brains out. Not wanting to disappoint his grandfather, not wanting to see his grandfather grief-stricken, he decided the best thing to do would be to kill him too when he got home. So before he could get into the house to see what damage Ed had caused, he killed the grandfather as well.
So did Ed just have a thing against women? Was that his thing?
Definitely. Yeah.
All right. So it wasn't any other kind of thing, just against like, it was
well,
just
all his
by
victims,
women.
with the exception of his grandfather, are women.
And his grandfather was basically a mercy killing in his eyes.
In his eyes, yes. So he went into a mental institution at that point in his teens.
Okay.
But Ed was a model inmate. To the point where they actually started giving Ed jobs around the hospital that left Ed get into records and evaluation of doctor's notes, and Ed learned how to behave in order to get his release. He knew what the doctors wanted to see. He knew what the nurses wanted to see. He knew what the staff were expecting to see him progress to a level where he could be released. Okay. And that's what he did, and it worked, and he got out, and he went on to kill numerous more young women because he's the co-ed killer.
Yeah.
He was killing girls from college.
Yeah.
And Andy was the same, but I suppose Andy didn't do as much damage as Ed did when he got released, even though he did it. If you believe Andy did it, he did a little bit of damage. If you believe Tiffany was involved, then Andy's just a victim himself.
Yeah.
But that's how Andy got himself out. He was there for a while, and then eventually he managed to work his way through good behavior to a release.
Yeah, and that work paid off because 8 years going between hospitals and group homes after 8 years of it, Andy was deemed healthy enough to return to foster care, but after a number of failed attempts to rehome Andy, the decision was made to enroll him in Kent University Military School, with the hopes being that the straight-laced atmosphere of litany of rules and punishments would help Andy sort his life out and maybe knock the child out of him, and Chucky along with it.
Well, like Andy wasn't settling in these homes because he was trying, similar to Kyle before him, because Kyle was the very same way. Before she got to the Simpson household, Kyle was a constant runaway.
Yeah.
You turn your back, Kyle was gone, and they'd have to track her down, get her back into the group home, and then find her a new foster home in the hope that she'd stick there for a little while. And Andy was kind of getting the same way. He'd turn up at a foster home, he'd be there for a couple of weeks, and the next thing you knew, he was missing. And then they'd find him, round him up, and they'd bring him back to the group home, and it was on to the next foster home. And this went on and on and on and on and on and on again. And even then, it was difficult to find foster homes to take him, considering what happened in the Simpsons home. Do you know?
Yeah.
I mean, the two tragic deaths there. Fine, one is accidental and one is suicide. But if you're a foster parent and you're hearing that's coming at you, it's very reminiscent of back when we were talking about Dexter Morgan Moser.
Oh, yeah.
A subject that we're probably going to have to revisit with all the new information that's been pouring out at us for the last fucking year since we did the series. But Brian, his brother who became the ice truck killer, he and Dexter were separated at a young age, and he was very similar in that regard, that foster parents wouldn't hold on to Brian because of his behavior and because of his threats and because of the way he dealt with other children around the foster care system.
Yeah.
I mean, in one case, he stabbed one kid in the hand for taking food off his plate.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And in his situation, the social worker decided the best course of action was that he'd settle best in a mental institution, and that's where they put him, and they drugged him up, and they fried his brains a little bit like they did with Andy Barclay. But in Andy's case, they decided before it was time to send him back to a mental institution, they were going to give it one more go, and that was with Kent Military School. And Kent's reputation as a military school, it had a very good reputation as a military school. It straightened a lot of people out, really built discipline, really built character.
Yeah.
And it was ran by a man named Colonel Francis Cochran, who was described. This man did two, I think we're going to mention it again later, but he did 2 tours of Vietnam, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And although he was a hardened military man and he would be strict on rules around the place, he was known to be tough but fair.
Okay.
And when it came to Andy, he wanted to give Andy the benefit of the doubt.
Okay.
He wanted to give Andy a chance. And he told you, from what we know, that's basically what he said to Andy day one when Andy arrived. He's like, it's time, that line that the fucking military people like to use of, it's time to put, when I was a child, I played with childish things. Now I'm an adult, it's time to put childish shit away. And that was basically how he referred to the good guy doll. It was like, when you were a child, the good guy doll was a good enough excuse. You're an adult now, at 16 years of age. Time to forget about the good guy doll and put that aside. Okay. So at this point, we're talking about 1998, right?
Yeah.
I believe this is around the last time as well Play Pals made a play to bring back the good guys. Yeah?
That's correct. So we spoke last week about how Play Pals swept the original 1988 incident under the rug and tried again in 1990, only to have Andy Barclay thwart their plans for a second time. Now, most companies would cut their losses at this stage and move on, but Play Pals at this time was being run by a particularly greedy man by the name of Haskell Sullivan.
No relation.
No, he doesn't have a no. Sullivan, who stepped on every pier in his way as he headed for the top, was a ruthless man only worried about the bottom line and profit. It was him who insisted on a renewed marketing campaign for the dolls in 1998, again believing that the Barclay story had faded into the ether, citing soaring ratings for Good Guy Adventures reruns as a reason to move forward with production.
Not that he had to convince anyone. And from what I hear, like, the buck stopped with him. He had the last word, everything to do within the PayPal Corporation. I mean, his attitude towards the Barclay story was, this is rubbish, this is bullshit, and we're suffering for a kid's delusions, a homicidal child's delusions. Yeah. And there is absolutely no reason why. And I mean, like, he tried to play it up in the papers as, why should all the other children suffer for this one crazy kid? Because it's obviously a very popular toy, very popular cartoon, and all these kids are missing out because Andy Barclay is a nut. Yeah. Really, he gave a shit because before Andy Barclay, they were swimming in money from the Good Guy franchise, I suppose you'd call it. So they went straight in with a new marketing campaign, new cartoon episodes, new accessories for the Good Guy doll. They were all in. Yep. And I mean, this should have stopped shit from day one. I mean, you've had 1988. You had your Good Guy dolls flying around the place. There's a murder case. 1990, you bring back your Good Guy dolls. There's another bunch of murder cases. Yep. And poor Haskell Sullivan will be the first to go in this round of Good Guy doll marketing. So in 1998, Haskell Sullivan, literally the day of the launch of the Good Guy doll, was found beaten, stabbed, and strangled. All the weapons used against him were toy prototypes that he kept in his office. Now, for a cruel, kind of money-hungry man, you wouldn't know to walk into his office. His office was covered in toys. It looked like fucking something out of Mr. Rogers' house or Pee Wee Herman's house or something like that. Okay. You go in there with toys everywhere, but they were just prototypes, stuff that was bought in. They're like trophies of, look how much money I made off of this, look how much money I made off of that. But he was murdered in that office, and the only thing that was stolen was the prototype of the new line of Good Guy dolls. Yep.
And this doll would later show up during investigation, which would be found in the possession of Andy Barclay at Kent University in Brownsville, Missouri, roughly 400 miles away.
Now, records show that it was sent by mail, which again, number one says that he didn't kill him. Andy had nothing to do with that. So records show that it was sent by mail, which again leads into my theory of Tiffany Valentine being behind Sullivan's murder and the doll being stolen. We know, and we're going to talk about it in the next episode in depth, that former actress Jennifer Tilly would become obsessed with Tiffany after learning about her story and character while working on the same movie lot as the production of the movie Chucky Goes Psycho in 2004. Okay. And that Chucky Goes Psycho movie, we're going to talk about the inspiration of that in this episode. Cool. She will go on to send potential victims a vintage Good Guy doll in the mail before terrorizing the family. Now, we have a doll arriving by post to Kent long before Tilly's obsession started, and seeing as she was trying to copy Tiffany, you'd have to assume she got information that Valentine was probably at least suspected of Sullivan's murder and of stirring the pot with Barclay by sending him the doll she stole from the crime scene.
Yeah. Well, that is the big mystery in this next part of the story. So while Andy would take the blame for 2 murders and was suspected in a weapon tampering crime that would leave 2 Kent cadets dead, no one could figure out who killed Haskell Sullivan and who sent Andy the stolen good guy doll.
No, when Andy gets to Kent, other students and staff would say that he was, how would I say it? He wasn't angry, he wasn't pissed off, but he was reserved,
Repressed?
kept to himself, very stoic. Is that the right word?
Yeah, I think so. Stoic.
Yeah, kinda,
quiet, like.
Yeah, kept to himself. He had 1 or 2 people he would talk to, but he wasn't your average teenager. He wasn't, wild, but he wasn't rebellious. He seems tunnel vision, single-minded on one particular thing, but no one could figure out what that thing was straight off the point. Yeah. No, obviously he's going in there with a reputation. Everybody knows who Andy Barclay is in 1998 at this point. He was probably unrecognizable to the people who were there, but once you hear the name, like I said, we grew up hearing this story consistently, and we live in Ireland, so people who were 400 miles away from the incident are probably going to have an idea. Someone who lives in the same country probably going to have an idea who Andy Barclay was and what the story was behind him, especially being that Good Guy Adventures was on the level of He-Man and Transformers and all that stuff. It was that Saturday morning TV show you got up early to watch. Yeah. So these kids knew why it was cancelled to begin with. Yeah. They knew why it was off the air, when it was coming back, what happened, why it was taken off the air again. So, I mean, going in there, people kind of know what Andy's past is, and they're a little cautious of him. But Andy at that point wasn't exactly like he's a teenager. Teenagers aren't generally big, muscular kind of guys, so no one's generally afraid of him. But they all kind of have this idea.
They're wary of him, are they?
Well, there's a possibility at 8 years old this kid murdered a bunch of people. There's a possibility at 6 years old this kid murdered people. It's down as accidental, but you and I both know you get accused of a crime, guilty or not, that's going to stick to you. That stain sticks to you for life.
Yeah, sure.
So we've talked before about how a lot of the deaths around Andy were categorized as accidents over the years, like Maggie Peterson, Eddie Caputo, Dr. Ardmore, his teacher, his foster parents, the factory worker he and Kyle accidentally killed when they broke into the PlayPal factory. And this section is no different. Yeah. So within days of Andy arriving at Kent, Colonel Francis Cochran, essentially the principal of Kent, died of a heart attack at 56 years of age, having survived 2 tours of Vietnam, as you said, throughout his decorated career. I mean, tragic, very young, but hardly Andy's fault and not really an accidental. That's natural cause. That's
a coincidence.
That's too much bacon and not enough exercise. You know?
Yeah. But like this, it's one worth noting because although the death was by natural causes, it was a big death for Kent University.
Oh, yeah.
And it would have been enough of a distraction to allow someone in around the usually secure military school grounds. So people could get in. Plus, it came off the back of a more brutal accidental death from earlier that day, and both deaths happened within 24 hours of Barclay's arrival at Kent.
Again, I don't know how much you could blame anyone for this next one. For some strange reason, the trash guy, the garbage man, the bin man came along to collect the bins and got into the back of the truck. Like, did you know where they put the rubbish?
Yeah.
He must have put something in there that he didn't mean to put in because he was in there when the crusher machine that works, that compacts the garbage so that you can fit more in, that kicked into gear, and he was stuck inside there as it compacted closed. People could hear him screaming. They went over to try and stop and save it, but it was too late. The man got crushed. So, in the meantime, though, Andy was distracted before the screaming by the sight of Colonel Cochran walking across the campus, holding a good guy doll, which had arrived in the post for Andy. Now, Andy never got this post because a young lad named Tyler, who probably the youngest cadet in Kent. I mean, from what I remember, he was maybe about 8 or 9 years old, 8 years old maybe. He was a Good Guy fan. He had just gotten into the new cartoons that had come out. And he was asked to deliver the package from the mailroom to Andy. Basically busy work to try and keep the kid busy. Keep him out of the way because he had been pissing about annoying the adults who were trying to do their work. And they're like, you know what? Do us a favor here, kid. Bring this to Andy Barclay. Okay. He says along the way, he was tripped over by some bullies, fell over, the package ripped, and he saw what was inside. And it was a good guy doll, something he had been dying to get. Yes. But Kent had a rule, no toys.
Okay.
You know, it sucks. I mean, these little kids, they were kind of being forced to grow up really fast. Yeah. And as far as I know, in Tyler's situation, it wasn't a case of he was there because he was a bad kid. It was more that he was there because he was an orphan and no one was taking. He had no foster. There was no spot for him in foster care. So the kid basically was thrown into a world where he was told to grow up at 8. That's you know, he saw what was inside in the box and decided, obviously not never having a toy in his fucking life, I'm taking this and I'm going to go play with it first. Mm-hmm. And he takes it to a secluded room where he thinks he's alone hiding, and he's playing with it when Colonel Cochran walks in and catches him. And he takes the doll away from him and goes to throw it away. Okay. Now, Andy seeing the good guy doll, I reckon, must have set him off a little bit, because he went looking for this doll in the trash himself afterwards and noted he couldn't find it.
Okay.
Which actually, I just made the connection there.
The trash man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a little weird, isn't it? The talking doll that we keep saying doesn't exist, and this guy's in the back looking for it, unless he saw it go in and thought, oh shit, a vintage doll, I can make money off of this.
It's still in the box.
No, he's out of the box at this point. I mean, Tyler would have had it out of the box playing with it.
Oh, and Cochran walked across. Yeah, sorry.
So Cochran is, according to Andy, Cochran was literally walking by holding Chucky by the hand. You know? And the doll was just dangling there and bouncing off his toy as he walked, and Andy caught a glimpse of it. I would assume if you see your mortal enemy walking across campus, you're going to spot him too, no matter what you're doing. Yeah. Either way, Andy went looking in the trash for this doll, couldn't find him, and came to the conclusion he must be in Cochran's office. Check there, couldn't find him. Then he heard that his superior. Now, when I say Andy's superior, this is
like a prefect.
Again, you're in essentially a prefect. You're in a military school. Everybody's got grades. Everyone's got levels. You got cadet colonels, cadet sergeants, cadets this. And one of them was a man named Sheldon, Colonel Sheldon. I can't remember his first name. I got to find that 1 second. Anyway, he heard a rumor that Colonel Sheldon had taken the doll because he knew about Andy's past and wanted to fuck with him a little bit. So Andy went to his room trying to find the doll, and instead was found just rummaging around this kid's bedroom. Yeah. And obviously not a good look on your first day of school. No. Especially when you're already kind of down as being a bit of a fucking psycho to begin with.
Exactly. So there's 2 deaths in 24 hours, neither which could be blamed on Andy Barclay or even Chucky, the killer doll.
No.
This would have been fine if it wasn't followed by 2 undeniable murders and 2 more tragic but possibly accidental deaths after that.
Yeah. So there was Sergeant Andrew Botnick. He was the school's barber, because it's military school. You need a buzz cut. Everyone needs a buzz cut. So his job was to give you that buzz cut, and he took pleasure in it. He loved bringing new recruits in and shaving those long locks off and watching the soul leave their body because
girls?
of it.
Or is it just boys?
No, girls got a pass, just boys.
Oh, but there was girls in Kent.
Yes, there was. We'll talk about one later.
I forgot that. Sorry.
Yeah. So he was found after the fact.
Yeah.
And when I say after the fact, I mean after the police got involved, because it's all kind of happens fairly quickly. He was found with his truck up, bled out in his barber shop.
Did you a scissors or a razor? Do you think was one of his own weapons?
Oh, no, yeah, it was a shaving razor. It was like one of those straight edge fucking old school.
Oh, when you said shaving razor, I thought you meant one of the new ones.
No, you know, one of those.
Yeah, a straight razor.
Straight blade kind of one. Yeah. Also, there was a man named Michael Chifo who was murdered. He was found shot at a fun fair. He was a security guard at a fun fair. He was found shot dead in his little tent office thing that they had in the fun fair. Yeah. But we'll talk about him a little later in the story.
So despite the deaths of Wills and Cochran, the decision was made by the Kent leadership to continue on with the annual Kent University War Games.
Yeah, so every year they would have war games. And not the WWE war games, not one big cage and 2 big rings. This was your average military war game. So they'd head off out into the wooded area around Kent with paintball guns. They'd have 2 teams, all obviously, laid out like a proper army. So you'd have your sergeant, colonel, all this kind of job, and you'd have to follow rules, follow the different strategies, and try and basically capture the flag.
Yeah.
So in this case, a couple of the weapons that were used had the paintball bullets replaced with real bullets. Ooh. So these weapons were full on armed weapons. They were real weapons. Even the paintball bullets looked very, very similar to to bullets, because obviously with a bullet, you see a bullet, it looks long, it looks big, but that bottom half of that bullet doesn't actually go anywhere. That's where the gunpowder is held. When the hammer hits the back of it, it shoots the pointy bit in the front out towards what you're trying to kill.
And then it's the dislodged casing that is
and the dislodged falls onto the ground or afterwards. So in this case, instead of a sharp metal tip on the top, you have a little paintball on the top. I still imagine it would hurt like a bitch to get hit by one.
Yeah.
I mean, a regular paintball. Oh yeah, a regular paintball ball can leave a bruise. So I imagine this thing's knocking you on your ass. But again, it's military school in the 90s. This is a strict place, and they're trying to teach these people how to become men, how to. Because in a lot of cases, yourself, people in military school are probably people coming from backgrounds where they probably weren't exactly behaving themselves. A lot of the time, even when it comes to adults and certain petty crimes or continuous petty crimes, judges will make the decision of, well, you can go to jail or you can join the army.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of this as well. It's you can go to juvie or you can go to Kent. And they'll pick Kent because juvie's a bit of a fucking bitch.
Yeah.
So there was 1 or 2 guns with live ammo inside of them, and there was 1 or 2 later on when they did a little stock take, because obviously when they noticed when there was 2 dead bodies lying around, they wanted to go check the weapons, see how many of them had been altered with. They also noticed that there was a grenade missing.
Okay.
From the armory. This would result in the death of Brett Shelton. Couldn't think of his name, but I have it written here. And the brave sacrifice of one of Andy's only friends in the place. No, I say friends. He'd only been there fucking 48 hours at this stage. And that was Harold Whitehurst. Now, Harold Whitehurst was, the only way I could describe him is, do you know the kid in The Wonder Years that everybody thought was Marilyn Manson?
Yeah.
He looks a lot like that kid.
Okay.
And that kind of weedy geekiness. He got bullied a lot by the likes of Brett Shelton and his friends and all that. So for him to do this was a huge kind of act of bravery from someone they saw as being a bit of a wimp. And he, when the grenade came flying towards a group of them, this was just after Shelton had been shot, and obviously everyone's gathered around going, what the fuck, what's going on? A grenade lands in between all of them. Nobody knows who threw it. Nobody knows where it comes from. But Whitehurst instinctively jumps on the grenade like a soldier does, and the blast kills him.
Yeah.
Andy, at that stage, escaped from that scene with a classmate called Perry De Silva. This is the girl we were talking about. She did have long hair. And they he led her to a fun fair just down the road, and that's where we get the death of Chifo. Now, what De Silva saw and what Barclay told her are 2 different things. Barclay told her that Charles Lee Ray was out to get him and out after him. Now, everybody who had heard this story had heard the story of Chucky the Killer Doll. When this obviously was going on, De Silva being one age with Andy, although she would have heard of the story of Andy Barclay and Chucky the Killer Doll, probably didn't know who Charles Lee Ray was. I mean, let's face it, you and me mention people's serial killer names to people, and if it's not Bundy, Gacy, or Dahmer, they look at you like, it's like, who the fuck is that?
You probably recognize the monikers, like the Night Stalker.
Yeah,
but like not
Richard Ramirez is another big one. But if you turn around, you were like, hey, do you ever hear of Albert Fish? People didn't really look at you going, who the fuck is that?
Albert Fish was huge for our grandparents' generation. So if we're talking to our grandparents, they're probably like, oh yeah.
But in this case, Andy had stopped it wasn't calling him Chucky the Killer Doll to De Silva, according to De Silva. Barclay claims he 100% said that it was the doll that was doing it.
Okay.
But De Silva claims that he said a serial killer by the name of Charles Lee Ray was trying to hunt them down, and he was the one responsible for Shelton's death and the grenade. They were found at the fun fair with the good guy doll that had been robbed from Sullivan's office. The good guy doll was in pieces. It had been thrown into a large fan. So one of the rides, I think it was like a ghost train kind of ride.
Oh, yeah.
And it had this huge, massive fan in the center of it, basically to keep the machine cool.
Yeah.
Or from overheating and stopping. And De Silva said that at one point, she could see Andy struggling with this doll. Didn't look like the doll was doing a whole pile, but best way to describe it, and only Irish people are going to get this reference.
Where have I seen it? I feel like.
Do you remember back in the 90s watching The Den? And they would have
get
Ted.
thrown into him, yeah.
And Ted would get thrown in, and Ted was like, basically, this was a children's show.
Ted. It was about that big.
Yeah, it was like a panda bear. It was basically it was this Irish kids show named The Den. It wasn't an actual show. It introduced all the cartoons that were
like
coming on.
Like the way we're sitting now, like
yeah.
that kind of format.
And they'd have one presenter and then there'd be like 2 or 3 puppets on the front. Zig and Zag were the originals. They were aliens from the planet Zog. Then they left because contract negotiations. Zig and Zag were like, fuck this, I can get a better deal over in
Hang
England.
out with the teenagers.
And
they started doing the teenage show at about 6:30.
Oh, Channel 4, yeah.
Oh, then they came back to the network 2 after a long time.
Yeah, Too Fat.
Too Fat.
I remember Too Fat. But at the time, one of the gimmicks of the show was that there was this bear named Ted that would come around. And every now and again while you're watching, someone from behind the camera would throw Ted at the presenter and he would pretend to struggle with the teddy bear behind the desk, falling all over the place, knocking shit all over. And that's pretty much what De Silva said she saw happening with the doll until Andy eventually pushed the doll into the fan.
Okay.
And the doll got cut to pieces.
Okay.
Police investigated the whole thing, and in the end, they believed that Andy was responsible for the death of Botnick and Chifo.
Okay.
They said basically that seeing the good guy doll on the property followed by 2 deaths almost instantaneously. I mean, like you have him seeing the good guy doll. You have the garbage man getting killed after the good guy doll gets thrown into the garbage. And then that night, Colonel Cochran, yes.
Cochran.
He dies of a heart attack, fair enough. But in Andy's mind at this point... It's all linked
in Andy's mind.
This is the 3rd time I've seen a good guy doll, and this is the 3rd time this shit is happening. So when he gets into the police investigation, interrogation room, he is hysterical with... Chucky did it. He's back. He's going to come back. He's going to keep coming back. He's going to get me.
What a way to get back into the mental health.
Well, that's exactly what happened. Andy was, again, sent on his way. So.
Well, 3rd time lucky is how the saying usually goes. But I suppose it depends on what side of the coin you land on. For the US penal system, it was 3rd time lucky in regards to tying years of crimes to Andy Barclay. And for Andy, it was his ultimate undoing.
Yep.
So Andy was sentenced to be incarcerated rather than in a mental health facility or what can only be compared to an open prison for youth offenders.
Yeah. So open prisons basically are like you can come and go as you please. And again, we'll talk about that next
Not
episode.
a really bad decision though. If you're like,
well, it was more of a case of he starts being incarcerated at a mental health facility, and over time. He was moved into this. I don't want to call it an open prison because it was more like an open mental health facility. It was like a halfway house for mental health.
Okay.
So he was able to go out and go to work. He was able to go out and socialize, but he had a curfew and he had to be back in this facility in his room for a certain time every day. So that they could keep an eye on him. He was also ankle monitored. They knew where he was at all times. He was signing. He couldn't leave town, let alone the fucking state. So he was under very, very, very strict observation at this point. And I suppose it helped because it seems to have ended what we know of Andy Barclay's story. Because from what I have heard since then, he spent a little bit of time getting his shit together in an apartment in Chicago, and then he moved to a secluded cabin in the woods where he pretty much has stayed quiet. He's been seen traveling the country from time to time. Some people believe that when he's traveling, though, is to go see Kyle, who is still on the run. I think Kyle's a bit of a badass. Kyle has been on the run for nearly 30 years now.
It's nice they have a relationship after all.
Well, that's just hearsay.
Okay.
And it's like Andy's going here, there, and the other place. He's seen around with a woman. They're not too sure who the woman is, and when police come to investigate the situation, Andy's gone back home, and this woman's nowhere to be seen.
Okay.
So, I mean, like, whether Kyle's alive, dead, or whatever, nobody really fucking knows. All we know is that Kyle was never, ever, ever... And I hate to say she's a bit of a badass. I mean, she is, if we believe everything that we're saying, she is kind of a murderer. She did kill 2 people.
Yeah, okay.
You know? So, I mean, but yeah, that's what the belief is.
Okay, so that's where Andy ended up by the end of 1998.
Yeah.
That's where he'd stay until 2003.
Funny enough, outside of the Jesse Jade crimes, which literally come off the back of Andy's stint in Kent, like a month after the War Games, there are no more Chucky rumors until 2004. So was Andy involved in the downfall of Jennifer Tilly?
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, but one that will have to wait until next week. Because as you pointed out, we still have the Jesse Jade crimes of 1998 to cover today. And that brings us to your prime suspect, the grieving partner of Charles Lee Ray, Tiffany Valentine.
Now, Tiffany was guilt-ridden after Charles's death, which is funny because this woman has killed a lot of people, and guilt didn't seem to be something that would be built into a psychopath like her. But when it came to Charles's death, she was really struggling to accept his passing, and on top of that, she hated the fact that she was the one that ratted him out and got him caught.
Okay.
Now, you have to remember as well at this point, she didn't realize what he was doing with the Pierces. She thought this was just another Charles game where he was fucking with the Pierces. She didn't realize he was genuinely looking to start a family with Sarah Pierce and then her kids after killing the father. She thought it was just a new form of torture he was practicing. So she still thought she was the love of his life and he was the love of hers, you know?
Okay.
So, I mean, she's struggling with all this. And I think something I do have to admit myself at this point is I thought she was involved with everything, but I'm starting to think from what I've read about her now that Tiffany had nothing to do with the 1988 Andy Barclay stuff.
With 1988?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because according to biographers who have covered Tiffany Valentine in depth, Tiffany didn't really start to get into the idea of Charles being able to come back until she heard about the Andy Barclay story.
But that's it. Like, there would have been too much, as in like a too short of a period of time in between Charles Lee Ray's death and the Andy Barclay scenario of 1988.
For her to be suddenly be like, no, he's still alive and this is how I'm going to do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, what they believe is that Tiffany heard about the Andy Barclay saga, the first one.
Okay.
And thought to herself, he did it. Charles did it. Because she knows Charles inside out, and she knows that this man's main goal in life was to become immortal through voodoo.
Did the newspapers report where the mother had gotten the doll from? Did she make that connection? I wonder, going, oh my God, he was shot in that toy shop.
Well, later, yeah. But I mean, well, no, that was connected instantly. I mean, the fact that she bought it from a homeless dude, I mean, that was involved in the story, obviously. I mean, how would we know it if it hadn't been written somewhere? So when she was questioned to where she got the doll, she did say where she got the doll. And as we pointed out last time when we were talking about this, Norris was there when she tried to question the same homeless man about the doll, and that homeless man decided he was going to try and rape her instead of answer her questions. Yeah. So, I mean, she hears this and she really believes, she's like, Charles did it. He found a way to do this, and he's trying to transfer. He transferred his body or his soul into this fucking doll's body, and now it becomes her obsession to find a way to do it again.
Yeah.
When she fails, she decides that the best thing she could do for now is to try and carry on his name, and thinking that maybe by almost putting Andy in that scenario again, that it will conjure up Chucky's soul back into the doll. Do you know, if you put the good guy doll back to the person who was supposed to be his chosen vessel and start all this. I mean, have you ever heard of like chaos magic?
Yeah.
And this idea of that you can almost will all this stuff into existence if you try hard enough. And that she was basically, this is what she was trying. She was thinking that, because she started studying voodoo too, and in her eyes, certain voodoo books were telling her to do this, and then she was looking at hoodoo books. And if you want to know the difference between voodoo and hoodoo, check out It's a Live Action, and we talk about it there. And if you want to know what episode it is, it's Hoodoo to Voodoo. That's the episode title. I was very proud of that. Yeah, I was. So she's reading all these books, and she starts to think, okay, if I can manifest the same type of chaos, the same type of, fucking bloody murder, then maybe it'll will Charles back from Dambella's grasps and into this doll again, and we can be reunited,
Okay.
So she dedicates her life to that, and in the process, she's carrying on his name.
Okay.
Like I said to you before, it's believed later on that she was the one that killed. What was that dude's name? She killed from he worked for PlayPal, and he was found strangled close to the Simpsons house. I will tell you now. It's funny because I know this guy's name, and this happens to me so often when we're recording. I know these people's name, and then it's time to say it on air, and it just leaves me.
Well, that's because it's like Game of Thrones, a different Game of Thrones every week. We have all these different names to.
This guy's name was. Come on, slow computer, hurry up. It was.
While you're waiting, I'm just going
to. Greg Madison.
Greg Madison. Okay.
So Greg Madison, she was believed to have done that, and then the thought is that she most likely murdered the teacher as well, wrote the "fuck you bitch" on the homework, all this kind of thing to lead people to believe that Andy was behind it again, and in the hope that Chucky will come back to her,
Yeah. Okay.
Basically, she believed as well, like we were saying, like in this manifestation thing as well, that by constantly doing it, constantly going back to Andy, constantly having this in the news, that if you could get the entire population of the world to start believing this story, that would be enough power to fucking to convince the god Damballa to give Chucky back to the world, so that he could be proven right. They're almost like it was this god's chance to show to the world that he is the real true God, and that he was the one that would take care of stuff. So much so that after the remaining parts of the good guy doll were pulled out of that fan in Missouri, she bribed an officer by the name of Robert Bailey to get the good guy doll out of the evidence locker and give it to her. But instead of paying him, she decided to kill him. And Officer Bailey was found with his throat cut, which would lead me again to believe that she had something to do with Batnick's murder.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it was in a very similar style, very similar cut, very similar weapon.
Straight razor?
No, it was a nail file. She carried her own nail file. I think she said it was given to her by Charles. It was engraved and everything.
It's a bit vicious. You'd have to stab and rip instead of slice.
Pretty much. But again, going for the neck. And as we know with these serial killers, they have a tendency to stick to a style.
Yeah.
I know we say Charles switched styles depending on who he was working with at the time, because he had accomplices.
I think a smart killer knows to change styles.
When he was on his own, he was a big old stabber as well. So, I mean, throat cutting seemed to be Tiffany Valentine's chosen choice of murder.
It's a very unusual method for a female killer
to cut the throat of somebody.
Yeah, very personal kind of.
Well, she is very unconventional in that sense.
Yeah,
I mean, we've talked about that. Serial killer women are generally poisoners, aren't they?
It's because women generally don't want to get that up close and personal with their victims.
Eileen Wuornos.
Yeah.
She had no problem killing her. She killed those guys usually in their own fucking car.
No, you're dead right. And
so, it's that. Yeah. Look, when it comes to serial killers,
Eileen Wuornos is different. Eileen Wuornos did have a personal thing against men, so that's why she was okay with using her own hands. I think like it was a thing of like a revenge.
That's why for the way she had been treated all her life.
Yeah, absolutely.
She did have it rough, to be fair.
Yeah. So
not that excuses what she did, like, but I mean.
Oh no. You can see her line of thought.
Yeah.
Doesn't excuse it. So now, as we have learned from covering a lot of these cases, we know that the one thing that gets an investigation really going is the murder of a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
So, and although Bailey was proven to be as crooked as Owen Wilson's nose during the investigation, I feel really guilty for saying.
I thought it'd be funny.
Police were still out in force to find the culprit in the murder of one of their own.
So straight away they noticed that they have missing evidence from the Barclay case. So that's going to bring up some suspicion. And suspicion did land almost instantly on Tiffany Valentine.
Okay.
Because they know she's still around the place. They know she's pissing about the place. They know that she hasn't been up to much. They always suspected her as an accomplice, even though she was a very good liar. And they managed to talk her way out of everything up to 1988. And obviously after 1988, she wasn't a suspect. All the attention was on Andy Barclay. So the attention kind of went off of her. Anytime they went to kind of look in on her to see what she was up to during these murder investigations, she always had an alibi. She always had a way out. She was very good at that. Tiffany Valentine would be able to talk her way out. Oh, yeah. No, what kind of started to become her undoing was because she did, I mean, like, outside of the Andy Barclay killings, from what we can see, Tiffany wasn't murdering independently. After Charles died, she killed as Chucky, or she didn't kill at all. Okay. But she did stay in a very dark circle. She was a goth kind of girl, you know? And she liked to hang out in BDSM clubs, and she liked to hang out with other goths and other people who were obsessed with serial killers and all that. And one of these guys was named Damien Baylock. Now, that's not his real name. His real name was Howard Fitzwater.
Oh, Damien Baylock is way cooler.
Well, that's why he changed it. It was more goth. And Damien, he's your typical goth kind of dude. And I covered in fucking... Now, even his tattoos scream poser, because I've seen pictures of the guy. The tattoos are tribal.
Oh, I was just about to say black tribal everywhere.
Yeah. Long black hair, lip ring, bit of makeup, bit of nail varnish, you know, leather, fucking fishnet tops, stuff like that. You know, your typical fucking goth. Like, that's who Howard Fitzwater was. Before that, he was your average fucking 9-to-5 office nerd. You know, he was an IT. Office. He was an IT guy. Oh. And if you look up pictures, because it's funny, I watched the news report about his murder, and they don't use his goth picture; they use his other picture, and it is so strange. I mean, it's like seeing someone from The Office. Like, he's got a short, proper haircut, glasses, white shirt, tie, pens in the pocket. He just goes mad at the
weekends, like.
No, according to friends, it was kind of the case of, do you know how you got people who are so straight all their life that eventually they kind of have this thing of, I've played my life too safe, I need to go out there and be different. And he completely changed up his life one day and got this new, quit his job, kind of disassociated from his usual friend group, which wasn't a big friend group. It was a small group of D&D kind of players that he played with, and started to frequent these BDSM clubs and happened to come in contact with Tiffany Valentine. Now, Damien at the time apparently talked a lot of shit to Tiffany, basically bigged himself up. You know, oh yeah, I'm a killer. Or at the time he claimed he hadn't murdered anyone yet, but that he liked torturing people. He'd kidnap them, torture them, and leave them.
I'd be like, well, that's bullshit, Damien, because you haven't been caught yet. I'd be like, if you're leaving people, torturing them, and just walking away from them, somebody's going to rat you in.
Yeah, but if you're hanging out in a BDSM club every fucking night, you can claim this was consensual. You know? Okay. And again, as you said, it was all bullshit. I mean, from what people who knew Damien from that scene say, outside of Tiffany, like people who would have known him from being at these clubs, they say he was all talk, no walk. That plenty of people came to him with the idea of having a fun night with him, and every time he'd have an excuse as to why he couldn't do it that night, you know? And he'd go missing.
My mom's home.
And from what we know, from what Tiffany had written in it, because she did keep journals. She liked keeping journals. She was that type as well, you know? Yeah. And then very poetically written and all this. But apparently she had pushed Baylock to the idea of, you're going to go kill somebody. And he turned up at her trailer. She lived in a trailer park. And it was in New York, Lockport, New York. And when he turned up there, he had Polaroids of some person he had massacred. And police found these Polaroids in Tiffany's trailer later on. They were later identified to be Damien himself in special effects makeup. She says in her diary, in her journal, that she figured it out when she saw the black nail varnish on the fingers of the dead body. And was like, this is you fucking idiot. And it's believed at that point she murdered him. He was found with cuff marks on his hands and legs. His lip ring had been ripped out of his face.
Oh, he totally thought he was getting away.
And he was suffocated. So the going thought is that she led him into the belief that they were going to have this BDSM session, and as soon as she had him locked up, she stuck a pillow over his face and sat in it.
Is that what ripped out the lip
No,
ring?
she pulled that out first, obviously, because when they checked her trailer, they found the blood-soaked pillow. That's how they know it was a pillow that was stuck over his face. Yeah.
So with the body of Fitzwater being linked to Valentine by the storage locker he was found in and the nature of what was stolen by Bailey from the evidence locker, police were fairly confident that they could get a conviction for both murders and closed in on Tiffany Valentine's Lockport residence.
And by residence,
I mean
trailer.
Yeah. Exactly.
But and again, that's what we were saying. Like she stuffed him into an old fucking chest. You know, one of these old kind of like
travel
an ottoman
chest.
kind of chest kind of
Yeah,
thing. Similar
kind
to
Dome
big
shape. No?
Yeah, well, it was like this big old, like a treasure chest kind of thing. And her fingerprints were all over it. Her DNA was all over. There was hair all over it. Not just hers, though, as we're going to get into soon. But as soon as they found that, they knew who they were looking for, and they were going straight for her.
Yeah, so like when the investigators raided the trailer to arrest Valentine, the search for more evidence, what they found led to more questions than answers.
Yep, because when they turned up at Tiffany Valentine's house to arrest her, they found Tiffany dead in the bathtub. Again, looks like an accident. She was in the bathtub watching a TV, and the TV fell into the bathtub. But they also, for what they found at the scene outside of Tiffany dead, was, and this really, really helps my theory, they found clippings from the Good Guy doll killings from 1988, 1990, and 1998 plastered on the wall, and scrapbooks of news articles about Charles everywhere. They also found Charles Lee Ray's DNA and a diary. When I say DNA, they found vials of blood. They found baggies of hair, fingernail clippings. They found vials with saliva in it, semen in it. She had bits of she had bits of Charles all over the place. They also found fingerprints of local man Jesse Miller in the trailer and on the storage box containing Howard Fitzwater, and witnesses seeing him and Tiffany moving the box into her car.
Okay.
Now, Jesse lived in the trailer next to Valentine's, and according to everybody in that trailer park, there was a belief that there was something going on between the two of them, especially in the days leading to Tiffany's death.
Okay.
He had been seen coming and going from her trailer once or twice, and they had been seen talking, and obviously he had been seen helping her with the box. And at one point, just before her body was found, he was seen pretty fucking quickly, like in a rush, leaving her trailer, holding what can only be described as a stitched back together Good Guy doll. So it looks like Tiffany stitched back together the doll that got ripped up by the fan, and a blonde doll in a wedding dress and leather jacket.
Cool.
And he was seen running off with that into his truck, and he drove off. Now, he was in a relationship with a girl named Jade, whose parents unfortunately died in a car accident when she was young.
Yeah.
So she was stuck living with her uncle, Warren Kincaid, who also happened to be the chief of police in Lockport. Warren was your typical hard-nosed cop.
Okay.
He was like, there were rules upon rules upon rules, and he hated Jesse. Mm-hmm. Jesse was trailer trash scum in his eyes, and he wouldn't let the two of them be together. He'd do everything in his power to keep them apart. If they were seen together by any cop in Lockport, all police had been informed. You see them together, you arrest Jessie and you take her home.
Yeah.
Jade is to be brought home. Jessie is to be brought into the drunk tank for the night, and we'll write down that you hammered drunk and we're doing him for that. So she's stuck with this guy. They have no money. They have no way. They feel like they have no way out, and they are stuck here. And that's the way it was for them.
And Jessie and Jade, just like all the others that screamed killer doll when suspicious death happened around, took two different routes when later questioned by police. Like Andy, Karen and Kyle before him, Jessie was steadfast in his belief that Chucky, the evil doll, orchestrated everything. Only this time he wasn't alone and was being aided by a freshly dead Tiffany Valentine, now also trapped within a doll. And this one was heavily modified. It was the wedding bell doll that was also designed by Wendell Wilkins and modified.
Yeah, and we talked about Wendell in the first episode. He's the man that designed the original Good Guy doll, basing it off of his own deceased son, Tom.
Yeah. And the regular wedding bell doll was a bride doll with short dark hair and could say a handful of wedding related phrases. They found one in the possession of Jessie and Jade and had been given a makeover, now sporting a long platinum blonde hair, fishnet tights, goth makeup and leather jacket drawn on beauty spot and her trademark Chucky heart tattoo just above her right boob, or in this case the doll's chest, because most dolls don't come with boobs, do they?
No. Barbie does, but not this type of doll.
Most of the other dolls are made to be kind of children, kind of like
yeah. And when we say like the trademark Chucky heart tattoo, that was something that Tiffany Valentine herself had. She had a little heart just above her boob that had Chucky written over the top of it.
Was it one of
essentially this wedding bell doll had been completely modified to look like Tiffany Valentine.
Creepy.
Yeah.
Creepy. Oh.
I suppose the going belief here is that in an attempt to free himself and Jade from the grasp of her uncle, he robbed Tiffany. Murdered, robbed, and took these two vintage dolls in the thought that they were worth money as well because of the way Tiffany spoke about them. Obviously, Tiffany spoke about the good guy doll like it was her fucking husband.
Oh, well, yeah.
And in his head, it was this vintage doll. Exactly. Yeah. And in his head, because of the stories that come along with this, I could sell this to some murder memorabilia guy and make an absolute killing. Because Tiffany had left them know this is the one that came straight from the crime scene last month. Do you know?
Yikes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And alternatively, while Jade had been heard rambling about the dolls, when she was punched in interviews, she claimed not to be sure about the dolls' involvement in the crimes, saying truthfully she believed that Jessie was to blame and that the dolls were just being used to confuse her and keep her from figuring out his own dark secrets.
Yep. So this is like Norris denying that Karen or what Karen claimed he saw, and the same with De Silva and Tyler and Kent saying that they were influenced by Andy's psychosis and seemingly genuine fear in the seemingly genuine fear in his voice when he spoke about Chucky. So they like when it came to De Silva and Tyler, it was hard as children for them not to believe what they were seeing because Andy was so convincing with the doll and with the way he spoke of the doll and the fear in his voice when he spoke about that doll. So, and that's what we said. The downfall here in every case is you have one person screaming, "The doll's alive and I have witnesses," and then the witness going, "I ain't going to no mental hospital. I didn't see shit. She did it." Do you know? And it happened right here again. Very reminiscent to the Ken and Barbie killers.
Canada,
Homolka and fucking what's his name? God damn it! Why can I never remember it? Is it Karen Homolka? Am I right with that? I can't remember.
Ken and Barbie killers.
Jesus Christ. And I could tell you this as soon as I could press pause on this recording and their names would come straight out of my fucking name. Carla Homolka and what?
Oh my God, I can find...
Is it Carla?
Oh man, I would have known it. Carla Homolka. And the other guy starts with his PB.
Paul... Paul Bernardo.
Yes. I was going to say there's a charity that sounds like it.
God damn it. I swear, this has happened so many times when we're recording. We'll get stuck for something and we'll both be looking like, shit, just pause the fucking show. And as soon as I hit the pause button, the word just comes spitting out of my mouth. Like instantly. fuck.
Not there though.
Very like the Ken and Barbie killers, where Carla at first was being blamed with Paul and they were sticking together, and then suddenly it was Paul did it all. I didn't know what was going on. Paul was making me do it. I didn't know he was drugging those girls. I thought it was all consensual.
Right,
didn't, even though she helped him fucking hide her sister's body, like, you know.
So I suppose the best thing to do with Jesse and Jade is to go to is to start at the beginning and to work our way through what happened with these two.
Okay.
So we've already covered what life was like for Jesse and Jade up until this point. So obviously the two were in what they perceived to be a desperate situation and they wanted to get out, as you said. So let's look at how they went about doing that.
It's funny, and we say perceived desperate situation. I'm sure it is a desperate situation to have your parents. Like in Jesse's case, he's living in a trailer park. He didn't have a lot of money. In Jade's case, her parents are dead. She's living with her tyrant of an uncle. Mm-hmm. They need to get out. But these are two teenagers thinking, we need to get out. Not realizing it's like, man, as soon as you're 18, you can just walk on out of there. Mm-hmm. No problem.
Nobody can stop you.
No one can stop you. We don't need to kill a bunch of people to do this.
I'd spend another few years back home. Save a bit.
But in this situation?
Not in that situation.
Let's not do the whole she said, he said stuff this time and be realistic though, right?
Okay.
There is no such thing as killer dolls. We can all agree on that, right? So for this one section, let's go with the police report. Why do you look so perplexed? Do you have some killer doll that I don't know about?
You change your tune a lot. Sometimes you're like, oh, it had to have been a killer doll. And then sometimes
all I said was that if you were to... The timeline and stories all make more sense when there is a killer doll involved. When you pull the killer doll out of the story and believe that it is humans that did this, suddenly you're kind of trying to think of...
Piece it all together.
Where, there's missing pieces. There's chunks of time that you can't explain how these people managed to pull this off and get away with it to a degree in some sense.
Well, you can understand it when you throw a living, walking, killing doll into it.
But
no, I'm only messing it. I get it.
We'll go right back to episode 1. How the fuck did Andy Barclay know where Eddie Caputo's safe house was?
It's just mad that to make sense of everything, you have to put a completely nonsensical thing in there.
Exactly. So we're going to try, this time we're going to go a different route. Yeah. In this case in particular, I am fairly fucking certain that Jesse and Jade are opportunists and are playing off of the Andy Barclay, Tiffany Valentine connection. They know Tiffany. Jesse obviously got a whiff of the idea that Tiffany was the one involved with all this fucking killer doll shit. Mm. So why not just add her into the mix, kill her off, add her into the mix, and if we get caught doing what we're doing, Chucky and Tiffany made us do it, and we'll do a couple of years in a mental institution and we can get on with our fucking lives, you know?
Yeah.
And if we get away with it, all the better.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, at least with Andy and Karen, you could say maybe Folly Do or Deep Psychosis. And Kyle, while sketchy, also had a tough time of things. And, you know, she just lost her first set of foster parents that she actually liked. So she was traumatized when she killed Grace Poole. Mm. Nobody knows what was said in that room before Grace was killed. Nobody knows how that went about. But Jesse seems like a real fucking scumbag. And Jade, while clear the murder, still seems a bit sketchy to me, do you know?
Police report it is then.
Okay.
So, according to police, witnesses around the trailer park where Tiffany and Jesse lived claimed they believed the pair were involved with each other, often seeing them flirting together, and in the days running up to Tiffany's death, the pair were seen going in and out of Tiffany's trailer with loud banging and moaning being heard from the trailer in the meantime.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like we said earlier, there were also witnesses who saw Jesse and Tiffany load the box Howard Fitzwater was found in, along with the prints on the box.
Yeah.
Police believed that Jesse was using Tiffany for kinkier sex than Jade would provide him, but had no real love for Tiffany outside of that. It's believed that he came across Tiffany's modest nest egg and decided to kill Tiffany, taking her money and running away with Jade to start a new life. So
that's what the police report says. That's what I believe. I mean, apparently he didn't see any harm in killing a killer either. So I mean,
hi Dexter.
Who would shed a tear over the death of someone like Tiffany Valentine? Not sure how he excused the rest as he went along, but with this one, he thought, fuck it. She's found dead. They ain't going to come looking for me over it. They're going to be just happy to be rid of her.
Yeah. And police believe that after killing Valentine, Jesse loaded up his van and went to get Jade. He took the made-over wedding bell doll and the good guy doll from the evidence locker with him, apparently already preparing his alibi for in case they were stopped.
And to try and make a bit of money out of them later when they sold them off, they got away with things.
Exactly.
I mean, can you blame him? So far, historically, the Chucky did it line got Andy off real murder charges 3 times. So it's worth the go, I suppose.
You might as well. Yeah. But he needed because Tiffany was not going to be his only kill that day. So knowing that he'd like always have to try and get around Uncle Warren to get to Jade, Jesse decided to go head on into battle, seeking out Warren instead of waiting for him to track him down. Warren was missing for a number of days, and it was later discovered that Jesse brutally attacked him with a nail gun before stabbing him multiple times in the torso. Then he hid the body in a luggage compartment in the back of his van.
And when they say he went out with a nail gun, I mean in the head. He was found with nails all in his skull.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like body shots. He fucking went straight for the head with it. But Uncle Warren wasn't to be his only obstacle. Warren, being chief of police in Lockport, had a number of lackeys driving around in cruisers waiting to do his bidding. None more snivelling than Officer Michael Needlenose Norris. Now, Needlenose obviously wasn't the nickname he was fond of, but it was one the kids gave him.
Long nose, like.
Not 100% sure. I don't know, was it Needlenose just because of the way he acted towards, because he was literally, like I say,
sticking his nose into
the police were watching out for Jesse and Jade constantly because even the good cops had to do it because if Warren found out, he'd make them suffer for it. But in some cases, you would have 1 or 2 nicer cops kind of just saying, get the fuck out of here, do not let me see you together again, or I am going to have to pull you in. Whereas Norris seemed to take absolute pleasure.
That's because it's needle nose, because he could stick his nose so far up the chief's arse. That's what it is.
So
figured it out.
He had them stopped, pulled over, and he was preparing to arrest Jesse. He had Jesse told to stay at the side of his van. Jade at the time was actually inside in a shop trying to get supplies for their road trip. Okay. So she had no idea what exactly was going on. By the time she came out, Needlenose's car was on fire with him inside in it. And Jesse was screaming at her to get in the van quick, we gotta go. Ooh. Later on, the investigation would show that basically a rag had been soaked in petrol and stuck into his petrol cap and lit on fire.
Okay.
So that it would travel into the petrol cap, blow up the car with him inside in it. They then, for some strange, odd reason after this murder, decided it was a good time for them to get married. Now, my idea here is that Jesse probably wanted to get this done quick so that if they got caught, Jade wouldn't have to testify against them. But Jade agreed, and they got married at the Little White Chapel along the way, and then they would stop and hide out in a motel called the Honeymoon Suite hotel. So that's where they were chilling out when they met Russ Gallanders and Diane Kidder. They were found the next day in a pool of blood and glass by hotel maid Cathy Najimy. Again, the belief is that I don't know what happened here. They were seen to have interacted with Jesse and Jade at the motel and were found dead the next morning. The glass killed them.
From the ceiling?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there was a broken champagne bottle found in the room, which they believe that Jesse must have thrown at the glass. Now, when I say, people are probably saying, what do you mean the glass ceiling? This was called the Honeymoon Suite. All the beds were heart-shaped and all the ceilings were mirrored.
The heart-shaped bed would turn me off, but I like the mirrored ceilings. I feel the heart-shaped bed would need a blue light on it. That's how I feel about it.
So the belief is that Jesse threw a bottle of champagne at this mirror over the bed, and the shards of glass came down, cutting the couple while they were asleep.
So it cut them to pieces rather than stabs. Oh, one went through them, down into them. Okay. I wasn't sure if cut them and they bled out, or if they just went through them.
They believe that Russ Gallanders was stabbed multiple times by the glass. killing him. Whereas Diane Kidder, they believe that the glass sliced her artery on her neck and that she bled out almost instantly there as well.
Yeah.
Now, the couple had one very close friend who used to help them try and get around. Basically, he'd collect Jade from the house for a rendezvous with Jesse and all that. And that was David Plummins.
Okay.
Not that it makes any difference, but David Plummins was a gay man.
Okay.
Who often pretended to be Jade's boyfriend in order to try and get him out. But Warren was no fool because David was a bit camp. And it was a little bit obvious at times that he probably wasn't Jade's.
Hey, girlfriend.
He met them at the honeymoon suite.
Yeah.
And again, they were in a panic to leave. Jesse was in a panic to leave anyway. And as they were leaving, he explained to them that he didn't believe either of them were the killer. He said that the night beforehand, Jesse had called him, claiming that he believed Jade had done the killings. And Jade had called him separately, saying she believed Jesse had done the killings.
Would you be pissed off with me?
Which, under the circumstances, what could I say? So he believed neither of them were really involved in it. This was just an awful coincidence and just a chain reaction of things that they happened to be around. Like all the other cases with the killer dolls involved. Only thing is that after David had made this declaration to the two, and the two had made up, and the two seemed happy, and they were going to continue on their road trip, David smelled something funny in the van. And when he went to investigate, he found Warren's body stuffed into a compartment. So basically, this van was decked out in the back to be, like you see in the American shows where they have their little back area with seats and lights and carpeted floor and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And he was sitting on one of these seats. The seat worked also as a storage area where you could lift up the seat area and there was storage underneath. He lifted it up and he found Warren inside there.
Kind of a fucking idiot driving around with that in your fucking van, like.
This kind of idiot.
Yeah.
David, being smart, grabbed Warren's side piece that was still in his belt and held it on Jesse and Jade and demanded that they pull the van over immediately. Both Jesse and Jade were they did what they were told. Jade was supposedly looking shocked at the time, but Jade claims she was shocked at the time.
Okay.
And she claimed that Jesse was just kind of looking behind him and looked panicky.
Okay.
They pulled over. David got out. And again, this is an accident, not a murder. Technically. Yeah, he wasn't paying attention. He had him pull over on the highway. He wasn't paying attention and he stood right out in front of a semi-truck and was splattered across the road. So not really directly them that did it, but now fearing that the van was too recognizable, they decided to steal a motorhome. And according to Jade, Jesse killed the elderly owners prior to letting her into the vehicle. The elderly owners being Cliff and Betty Fraser. And he left the bodies inside in the RV when she climbed in. So
what? So as in, like, did he leave more bodies again to be found in the RV?
Jesse isn't exactly like other killers we have encountered. Jesse isn't like someone who, like, we talked about Charles's youth, and we talked about how Charles growing up had homicidal tendencies, killing his mother at 8, killing the janitor of the boys' home when he was 14, 15.
I just feel like it's common sense that you know that a body is going to smell. It's going to stink.
I think it's just panic mode. I think this guy just saw a quick way out, killed what he deemed as
obstacle.
No, at the time when he killed Tiffany, it was a case of, well, she's a killer anyway. She's better off. The world's better off without her, and I can make a fresh start. But then his fresh start kept getting interfered by other people who. I suppose, like Pringles, once you pop, you can't stop. And once he killed one, it was like, well, I've already murdered one person. What's the harm in murdering another person who's getting away? Because in his eyes, Warren was an evil tyrant. Needle Nose was also the evil tyrant's fucking lackey. Do you know? These two at the motel, I can't explain to you unless they recognized them or something and he felt they needed to go.
Yeah.
And Dave, he had no intention of killing.
No. That
You
was
know,
true.
he just walked out. Dave found the body and happened to fucking walk out in front of a truck. So, I mean, yeah, and in this case, maybe it's just a case of, I mean, if you went that far in 24 or 48 hours, you think your mind's shot at this point. You've made the crossover from being a regular person into a homicidal fucking maniac. So what's two more fucking old people on top of the list if it gets me out of here, you know?
That's true. Yeah. Well, this is the point where Jade says Jesse went full evil maniac, telling her his plan in full. So he told Jesse that he'd been spending time with Valentine, and in this time, she had told him all about Charles Lee Ray, Andy Barclay, and Chucky the Killer Doll. She told him how she had been planting his DNA at crime scenes for years to mess with police, and that because of it, his body was to be exhumed out of its grave in Hackensack to ensure the man buried there was truly Charles Lee Ray. She told him she was going to try and beat them there so that she could get an amulet that Charles was buried with, an amulet she believed could aid her in resurrecting the killer doll.
So Jesse was going to get to it first, yeah? Was he looking to resurrect someone?
No, but he knew that he could get good money for jewellery straight from the grave of Charles Lee Ray, and maybe enough for them to get out of the country to start a new life.
Okay.
So the amulet is called the Eye of Damballa, and as of writing, it's believed to have been reburied with Charles after it was confirmed he was indeed dead and buried in Hackensack.
So we need to go to Hackensack and dig up Charles Lee Ray.
Absolutely. And as the couple got closer to Hackensack, the tension in the RV became unbearable, with Jade eventually losing it and letting loose on Jesse with a tirade that showed him she only saw him as a serial killer. She was then tied up by Jesse, and he hoped by subduing her that he could explain his side better.
Yeah, she claims she eventually decided to go along to get along and apologize to Jesse, saying she was just stressed out by the pressure of their current situation. She then said she convinced him to release her from her binds, and when he was relaxed again, she struck him in the head, causing him to swerve off the road and into a ditch. And at this point, they were actually right outside the graveyard anyway.
Okay.
So they could have just pulled over, but no, she knocked him. He was knocked out temporarily. She was knocked about the RV a little bit, but she got out and tried to make a run for it, running right into the graveyard.
Yeah.
Inside there, she actually found a man named Tony Barclay, who was spelled differently.
Oh.
Andy is spelled Barclay. This is Barclay.
Oh.
She found him there digging up the grave, in the process of digging up Charles Lee Ray's grave for the government to have a look. And before she could get him to go get help, Jesse walked right up and killed him.
Jesus.
She said at that point he got into the grave, tried to get the amulet out, but Lieutenant Lawrence Preston turned up. He had been trying to track down Jesse and Jade. He was the lead investigator on their case. And he, for some reason, got a hunch that, judging off of where the bodies were landing, that maybe Jesse had the same idea that Tiffany had. Because they have Tiffany's journal at this point. They can see what Tiffany's plan was. And he thought to himself maybe the same thing was going to happen. He was found mutilated at the scene.
Okay.
But not before he called in for some backup.
So after the murders of Barclay and Preston, Jesse, holding Jade against her will, and that's at least according to Jade, made their way back to the RV crash site. But before they made it to the road, the graveyard was swarming with police responding to Lieutenant Preston's call for backup.
So then we get to Jesse and Jade's interviews after arrest. We've already spoken about this. Jesse was inside there screaming, "The dolls are alive, the dolls are alive. They made me do it," or they did it. They killed everybody and dragged us along for the trip. And Jade was in the room next door going, "Jesse's a fucking psychopath." The trial happened and Jesse was convicted. He got the death sentence, but it was commuted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And that happened in 2020, the commuting of his sentence.
Okay. Was the death penalty, was that one of the ones where the death penalty was kind of like, say,
In, out, yeah. With Jade, she got 15 years because they didn't buy her story that she was completely innocent of this either, because they were like, you really fucking believe this guy was acting under the orders of these killer dolls? You really, there was basically this, they were saying there was plenty of chances for you to escape. There was plenty of chances for you to run away.
If only they had Dave as witness still, he'd be able to say, these are the phone calls I got off the two of them.
You walked out, you walked out, you saw Neil Norris's car on fire. You still got in the car with Jesse and went away and married him. But did she know Jesse did anything at that stage to the car? The car is right behind Jesse's fucking van, and if it's Neil knows, she knows what he was up to. She knows that he was planning to call him in, get him arrested,
Yeah.
She also obviously had a fair idea that something had went down at the motel because of how hastily fucking Jesse wanted to get the hell out of there.
Mm-hmm.
And they just didn't buy that she was a fully innocent of all this. But but as an accomplice, she did get a very soft sentence of 15 years, released after 10 in 2008.
That's not bad.
It isn't for the murder of what? 1,
No.
2, 3, 4,
6,
5, 6 people, and the cause. I mean, whereas David's death isn't necessarily their doing; it was their fault. It happened because of the situation he was in with them. Yeah. So Jesse's still sitting in prison to this day. Jade wrote multiple books and does talks for victims of abusive partners.
Oh, I was just about to say, I assumed they're not still together.
But she still has her doubters. So.
Oh, okay.
So far in the first 3 parts, we have covered a serial killer and his love life, a 6-year-old who was present for somewhere between 12 to 20 murders and never convicted of one, and a killer couple who wanted to steal a killer doll's necklace of immortality. How much more crazier could we possibly have left in this story?
How about an Oscar-nominated actress who kidnaps, tortures, and dismembers a surviving victim of Charles Lee Ray, all in the name of love?
Well, we did just pass Valentine's Day, so I mean, it's only right that we tell a love story next week. But if you can't wait till then and want to hear more, you can check out our Patreon at the Horrorverse Network. We have tons more content there for your listening pleasure right now. From wrestling to history, true crimes to cryptids and ghosts, we got something for everyone, including the video for this show, and that is up there right now for you to watch, listen to, and enjoy.
Yep. And you can check all that out now with our 7-day free trial at the Horrorverse Network. Also check us out on Instagram too. That's where we drop all of our news, updates, videos, pics and memes at Alive Pod and at Amy Rose IAA. And I must point out that 7-day trial is on Patreon. I think I forgot to say that.
Yeah, at the Horrorverse Network.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week with more tales from the Horrorverse. It's Alive podcast. All the guts and gore, none of the gills. See you all next time. Same Alive time, same Horrorverse channel. Hey, love ya. Bye-bye.
Hey, lady. Love you. Bye-bye.